My name is Kristen Thomas. I'm really excited to be here with everyone today. I'd like to welcome you to the conference of leaders here. I know that we'd much rather be in person and being able to visit and enjoy one another's company, but we have an opportunity to do the next best thing. And so we have here with us today a panel of leaders from the Cherokee Nation, Cherokee Language Department. And I get the pleasure of working with these gentlemen every day. Someday it's more a pleasure than others, but there's at least a part of every day. It really is a joy and an honor. So really happy to be here and to be your moderator and to join these gentlemen here this afternoon. So we're just going to go ahead and dive right into some overviews of the Cherokee Language Department and discuss the programs that are available for direct and indirect services in terms of language for tribal citizens. And at the end, we're going to go for about 45 minutes or so. And then at the end of our session, we'll wrap up with the Q&A session. So if there's anything a question that comes to mind, a comment, anything that you'd like to share with our panel or everyone else, feel free to drop that in the chat. And at the 45-minute mark, we'll go ahead and move over into a Q&A if we don't need to do that earlier, and I can read those questions to our panel. And so we'll go ahead and just not waste any more time and get started. I'm going to start with Aduhin this afternoon and ask him to just give an overview of the Immersion School and other programs associated with the school and under his purview as well. So, Aduhin.
Wow, Sio Nagad Aduhin Dabadon, Jalik Jindel Quas, Dagilon Staneho, Digadios Gaduha, Nidigwan Nagida. Sio, hello to everybody. My name is Wyman Kirk, and I work at the Cherokee Nation Immersion Charter School. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. I'm also now currently over a program called 14 Gen that does some language programming as well, and I'll speak a little bit about them as well as a program that we just started at Sequoia High School, an enhancement immersion program. But first, I want to tell you about the Immersion School. So Cherokee Nation operates an immersion school that was started in 2002 with 3-year-olds. And since that time, it had expanded a year from 3-year-old, then added 4-year-old, and then added kindergarten, first grade, etc., until it capped at 6th grade. We now have a 7th and 8th grade, but our 7th and 8th grades aren't language immersion. They're transition grades for students for going into high school, either at Sequoia or elsewhere. Our system is built around a model that we had worked with the Hawaiians and a few other experts on immersion, the Kira Yamamoto and some individuals from KU who were language experts. And what we did is we have a lead person and then an assistant, try to at least in each classroom. So you have 2 language speakers. And then the content is delivered in Cherokee. Now, Udawa Deesk and I just did a session a few minutes ago talking about how we're working to really redevelop the curriculum that will be utilized not only at the immersion school, but elsewhere. Currently, a lot of what we have in terms of those ideas, those materials at the school are based off state standards. There are some that are from a Cherokee base. We will be transitioning to developing, creating, and utilizing what would be a culturally based curriculum that will be utilized at the immersion school. Our school currently has roughly 110 students. And so I'm not very good at math. So you want to do the numbers in your head and figure out how many that averages in terms of students per class from preschool to 8th grade, feel free. And again, we try to have 2 speakers in each classroom. Now, that is not always the case. We have in our 5th grade and our 6th grade classrooms, just one individual in those classes, because it's relatively difficult at times to find individuals who are qualified to work in the system. And the format of the school is similar currently to what you would have if you were in another school, if you're in Tahlequah or whatnot. Our students report to school. Because of COVID and whatnot, we're testing them, and we're fortunate to be under the Cherokee Nation because we have access to testing materials. So we test before students come to school. And we have a relatively typical school day. So students will cycle through their subject areas during the day. So they'll have their math and their science, PE, lunch, and whatnot. Again, we're working on creating a new curriculum base for changing some of this, but right now this is how we're operating. And we have over each classroom a certified teacher. So this teacher is certified according to the state of Oklahoma. And then we have an individual in the classroom who would be classified as a teacher's aide. And those individuals provide the content and language instruction for the students. Our goal, our purpose of the school is not, it's beyond just creating individuals who are speakers of Cherokee. We're really trying to create individuals who are Cherokee people. So we want these young Cherokees, these young individuals to develop into Cherokee people. So we want them to have more than just a language base. We want them to have a cultural base to who they are. And we want them to really sort of, by the end of sixth grade, meet that ideal and then carry it into seventh grade and eighth grade. Now we have additional programs that are meant to help facilitate that growth after sixth grade. So that's where our 14 Gen program comes in. So we have a 14 Gen program that picks up where Immersion stops, where they get instruction in Cherokee as a subject area in seventh and eighth grade at the Immersion school. And then for those students who go to Sequoia, 14 Gen actually provides an after-school program. Now, we just received some funds from the BIE to start what we're calling an immersion track at Sequoia High School. And so under Chris Holmes, who's the Cherokee teacher at Sequoia, students can take their Achieve class, which is basically their homeroom class. And in that homeroom, it's all in Cherokee. And we'll be able to hire some speakers and some additional help who will be in the classroom to help facilitate Cherokee speaking in those classes for those students, not only for Achieve, but during the school day. And so the idea is for those individuals, those immersion students who are in that, or any student who really wants to immerse themselves in Cherokee in high school, starting with ninth grade, obviously going to 12th grade, they can be in this class, they can have access to these speakers, and they can converse, communicate not only with each other, but with these speakers and other individuals. So we're really wanting to develop a track that goes from this preschool to high school and really help students grow in their language. So we know we can get them to a certain point if we do things right at the Immersion school. We know 14 Gen operates properly, that we will get them a little higher in language. And then by the time they graduate high school, we want them to be at this really conversational level. We're working from these ideas of these proficiency levels. I don't want to get into it too much. If Wade or somebody else wants to, I'll let them handle it. But just know the idea is that we're taking them a step further each time they go, each rung of the ladder as they progress, both in terms of grade, but also in terms of their language and their cultural skill set. And excuse me, we're really focused right now on making the system seamless. Now, again, some of these pieces are just now coming into place. So it might take a little while before we're able to really sort of streamline those. Now, currently at the school, at the Immersion school, We again start with 3-year-olds. When we move into the Durban Feeling Center, we'll actually pick them up at a younger age. And so our plan is to have a much longer time with working with these individuals in language skills. At our school, we also have an after-school program and we have a summer program. And while there's an academic component to those, we also have a strong language component. Because of COVID, we're really probably about 1.5 years behind. And so we've got some catching up to do, but we do provide those elements to our program as well. The last thing I'll say about the immersion school is that we will be really focusing and developing these targets around language. And so for future students, so starting more than likely next year, next fall, really over the summer, when we take new students, we are going to have a different type of application process, one that really interviews the parents in terms of understanding and their willingness and buy-in, excuse me, to do these cultural-based programming and activities for their kids who will be there. And so we want to really make that transition at that time. I'll go ahead and stop there and then let someone else talk about their program. Excuse me for my coughing. I promise it's not COVID.
Yes. Widow Aduhin. Aduhin has shared with us one of our foundation programs in our efforts here at the tribe in terms of Cherokee language. And so out of the immersion school has come lots of growth and the clear need for additional programming. And so he's covered some of that growth, but I'd like to welcome Wade to the panel, and he's going to touch on some of those, how we address some of those additional needs that came from the school. Wade?
Sure, Wadagali scale to lock in our dome. Now, Jig teleport to Nela, say the Gaga he was saying. Now, the lena he, you had a deal told sour testy dollar. You still dig a do, walk the soil scratch lot do down. Though he, Gale elegant, down, uncle, see, my name is Wade. It's a pleasure to be here. Chilak Gabonahis, Sanu says, Dagilao Stane, I'll say, Chilak Gabonahis, Jundanil again. Ugawa Yusa, Udo Plasa, Dagilao Stane. My work is always associated with language revitalization. I'm in the greater department of the Cherokee language department, and I'm a manager over the Cherokee Master Apprentice language program. I'll talk about that initially. Recently, we've received a few grants with the help of our grant services department, wherein we are initiating some new programs. One of those is called Asa Fai Dinda Johans, the Teacher Bridge. It's about bringing people up to a higher level of proficiency and giving them professional skills when it comes to teaching abilities. We also have something called the Institute of Excellence. And this is all about taking first language speakers that are not as polished and proficient as our older first language Cherokee speakers, but yet it was their first language. They're definitely heritage speakers. They don't have the same level of proficiency. So we want to capture the most proficient language that we can. And the best way to do that is person to person. So these younger speakers will meet daily with native speakers out in the community, and they're going to increase not only their language proficiency, but their understanding of Cherokee academically and intellectually. We also have another grant called the Native Language Community Coordination Grant, NLCC. All of these grants are through ANA administration through Native Americans. The NLCC grant is all about strategy. Primarily, there are three objectives. One is to create a language board. Secondarily, we are also supposed to revitalize our teacher certification process. And finally, we are creating a curriculum that spans all of our various programmatic needs. We're trying to create curriculum alignment that meets not just age levels. We're not just targeting age levels like kindergarten or high school or post-college. We're also targeting proficiency levels. So that's the goal of that grant. So our flagship is the Cherokee Language Master Apprentice Program. Chalak Gawana Hiesting, Jundan Nilagay. And this program was started about 6 years ago now. There are a few of us second language learners that were really wanting to push Cherokee language development. We had the immersion school. We put a lot of eggs in that basket. We were wanting our children to learn, but what we realized is that when the children didn't have folks to talk to that were adults, they just became the language of the school. Further, the speakers that were hired by the school as native Cherokee speakers, we selected folks that had teacher certifications, which were great folks that had quite a few professional skills. However, they were never really taught how to teach Cherokee, those academic content subject areas they're used to in the Cherokee language. So it's been difficult, not just developing curriculum for the immersion school, but developing a language methodology that transfers that mainstream academic knowledge into Cherokee. We're still working on that. That was something that Aduhin, Wyman Kirk, as well as Udawa D's Howard Paden spoke about in a previous session today. They are coming up with a solution to that, but we also need younger teachers because these fluent speakers that came to our immersion school were generally older folks that a lot of times had already retired from the public school system. And they're going to be seeking retirement soon. And almost all of our speakers are in their grandparent years. There are very few first language speakers that are parent age. And so that means that most of the folks that graduated from the NSU program with Cherokee language teaching degrees were not first language speakers. Further, because of the program's limitations, they didn't have the exact exposure to the language they needed to become proficient to teach in an immersion school setting. So we wanted to make adult speakers, kind of like what they had at the immersion school, but for grown-ups, where we could give somebody a living wage, basically a stipend for them to survive on while they learn Cherokee for 40 hours a week, basically 5 days a week, 8 to 5 for 2 years straight. We knew that if we could get about 4,000 contact hours in Cherokee, that we would be able to graduate them with enough language proficiency to where they could survive in the immersion school. We thought about who we should teach in CLMAP, and we decided we needed to create speakers, but more than that, we needed to create teachers, people that could not just go to the immersion school, but out in the community and into our language programs here at work to ensure that the language was passed on. And so we created a process to vet potential learners as they come into the program. New program participants have to go through a two-process job interview, a very competitive application selection process. And once they get in our program, they're not just there for 2 years, but we ask a lifelong commitment from them. We want them to be in the language for the rest of their lives, to commit to the language like most of us have. In our first year, we chose 4 folks to come into the program. Over the course of 2 years, 2 of those folks graduated and they're employed with different language services. However, it was a difficult program. It's hard to get off the ground. There were a couple of us second language learners that acted as facilitators, and we had 3 native speakers, Cora Flute, Doris Shell, and Gary Wayne Van, that came in, and they had some teaching experience, but we wanted to utilize them as speakers first and foremost. And we had some second language learners, myself, Howard Paden, JP Johnson, to act as go-betweens, facilitators for the language session so they could step down the language. In that first year, we pushed as much language to the new participants, the new learners as we could. And in the second year, they took over where we left off. And in the second year, we brought in a second cohort, 4 more people to learn language. And that second cohort learned as much language as they could, while the first cohort, as second year learners, also helped push the language. They used their teaching facilitation skills to help build the new learners up. And that's how we continued on for the first few years. The second years would help teach the first years, but it was basically like a one-room schoolhouse. We had 3 native speakers, a couple administrators, and the second years would teach the first years. Recently, last year, we had a new initiative given to us, a challenge, you could say. We were told to quadruple our efforts. So instead of bringing 4 new learners in each time, we were going to bring in 16. That was going to be difficult. So what we decided to do is have 2 different classes, one in the spring and one in the fall. Each one would have 8. Our goal is to graduate 16 a year, but to do that, we would have to bring in 2 cohorts of 8 each semester. So we decided to break the program into 4 phases. We do not have the phases fully staffed yet, but when each phase is complete, there will be 4 6-month increments. Each one of these phases will have 2 native speakers and a second language learner. The second language learner, or second language users, as some people prefer, is not a first language speaker. Most of the time, they're graduates of our CLMAP system itself. And these second language users or speakers will come in and they will help facilitate the classroom. They'll keep attendance, they'll help track curriculum alignment, and they'll help with classroom management so that the first language native speakers can focus on teaching and using the Cherokee language. During the first semester, the first 6 months, the first phase of our program, we hit them pretty hard with Cherokee, and we get them to try to understand as much about themselves and their world and be able to introduce themselves and talk about the world around them as we can. During the second phase, they move up and they begin to understand how the verbs work in Cherokee. Different conjugations for different tenses or aspects, how verbs move in time, as well as the individuals that are represented by the subjects of the verbs. Every Cherokee verb has at least 4 parts: who's doing it, what it's doing, how it's happening in time, and exactly when it's happening. And we really focus hard on these verb conjugations in the second phase. The third phase, they go back and they teach a little bit of what they've learned to the beginners. So we've maintained this process of the second years teaching the first years, but they continue to develop their language, and it becomes much more conversational at this point. By the fourth phase, the final phase in the program, the last 6 months, they are full on Cherokee conversation. It's less about lesson plans and less about following any exact thing from day to day. There are curriculum and lesson plans created for our teachers and for our learners, but the whole goal is to have as much natural conversation as possible and push them into language development. They do continue to teach, so they have to develop their ability to create language materials as well as their teaching skills. And when they graduate from our program, they leave at a pretty high conversational level. Not all of our graduates have been able to reach that level, but I believe all of our graduates have graduated at intermediate level. In fact, I'm certain of it. Most of our graduates have graduated at intermediate mid, and a few of our graduates have hit intermediate high or even advanced low. The proficiency scale that Wyman Kirk, our Duheen, spoke about earlier is called the Actual Language Proficiency Scale. It stands for American Council of Teaching Foreign Languages. And we've adapted that to the Cherokee language. It starts with novice low. These are folks that are complete beginners. Most of the program participants that enter our program know very little, but even those that are experienced for years as learning the language on their own, within the first 2 or 3 months, the other beginners have caught up to. After novice low comes novice mid, and these are folks that can speak more than 200 words Cherokee. After novice mid comes novice high, and these are folks that can use the language to communicate on some level, but they only use memorized words and phrases. All of these novice levels are all about parroting the language. they're not very successful in creating with the language that they have. Once they start being creative, they're at the intermediate level. At this level, they can cobble together the things that they know to communicate, but they're very poor communicators. They're survivors, though. They can survive in the language. And once they develop enough accuracy and vocabulary to where they can stay in language all day long, they're at intermediate mid. They're conversational at this point, but nowhere near as proficient as a first language speaker. Despite that, they're able to use the language to learn the language and even teach the language at this level. At intermediate high, they're able to use a little bit of the language to go and talk about the future, to talk about the past. And they're able to get pretty accurate and talk about language in different domain areas, different subject areas, things that aren't just rehearsed, things that aren't just memorized. This comes from real language acquisition as it transfers from conscious thinking into unconscious using of the language. Once they hit advanced low, they're storytellers. They can fairly accurately speak about the past, the present, and the future. Once they're intermediate mid, they're very accurate in this. They almost sound like first language speakers once they're at this level. And when they finally hit advanced high, they should be pretty close to fluent speaker level proficiency. We have not created folks at that level in our program yet, but we're pushing to do just that. When they leave our program, they're able to read and write and understand Cherokee. They can speak to people from different communities and different dialects. And for the most part, folks from different communities and different dialects that aren't even used to listening to a second speaker communicate are able to understand a lot of what they're saying. But again, these are not first language speakers. These are second language users or second language speakers. Yet they have enough language to enter any classroom and to be able to stay in Cherokee all day long. They might not be able to say exactly what they want to say, but they can circumnavigate the language to be able to communicate with one another. We saw this as a weakness. We were happy with our success, but we want people to grasp the higher levels of language proficiency. It's hard to measure fluency, but proficiency, when you can measure proficiency, it means that you can measure what people can and can't do in the language, how they can use the language to communicate, to successfully complete tasks in a conversational setting. So we wanted to push people higher. So we applied for some grants and we received a grant for our teacher bridge, also funding. And this will take program graduates and other people that are highly advanced in the Cherokee language, and it will continue to develop their proficiency for the next 2 years. We're translating academic articles that folks have put together from various master's degrees programs that are associated with second language acquisition. We are taking academic subject matters from the Immersion schools so that they will get all of the academic content and the keywords associated with that under their belt. So they develop their lexicon to be able to communicate with the academic Cherokee. On top of that, we are translating Cherokee grammatical phrases into Cherokee so we can talk about how the language works in Cherokee. We could do verb analysis in Cherokee. 80% of the words in our language that we use on a daily basis are verbs, and verbs are very difficult in Cherokee. There are between 22,000 conjugations to each verb, up to as many as over 100,000, maybe even 1 million conjugations for some of these verbs. We're still working on that. Finally, we're also translating curriculum that is specific to culture. So our learners in the Bridge program will have something to communicate about and debate with one another, because through exchange of higher concepts, abstract ideas, they will develop their language proficiency. And sometimes it's hard to debate academic material, but everybody was taught something differently from what their grandmother had told them. So people will get together and they'll discuss cultural ideas. And for those folks in the program that don't have the same level of cultural background, for them, it will be a new experience. But we want folks that leave the teacher bridge to come out not just with an academic understanding of the language, a high level of proficiency, new teaching skills, but we also want them to have a deep and strong cultural foundation. The third program that we are very proud of is called the Institute of Excellence. And this is taking four very skilled learners from the community, people that have spoke Cherokee their whole life. They may not be as proficient as the elders, but folks that can stay in the language, and we're going to develop them into master level speakers. We want to turn them into the type of speaker that their grandparents were. We have a native speaker that works with them very closely. Her name is Doris Shell. She has a lot of community connections. She knows how to navigate our traditional Cherokee communities. We have a graduate from our program in there, Larry Carney, and these two work together with these 4 new learners to interact with speakers out in the community. These speakers out in the community are selected because of their language proficiency. They're some of the most adept language speakers that we have. They speak Shakespearean Cherokee. And so just by having these sessions throughout the day with these native speakers, our learners are pushing and growing their language. But we're also using documents that we've collected over the last several years in the Cherokee language to act as resources, teaching materials. They will go through these documents and have been going through these documents, finding rare words and phrases and having discussions about these words and phrases with the elder native speakers in the community. And they're learning to develop an academic understanding of the language while they do this. I've already mentioned NLCC, Native Language Community Coordination. This was developed when all of our different Cherokee language programs were under various departments. They weren't all together under one language department. At that time, we asked the leaders of these language programs or programs directly associated with language and culture to come together and develop a language strategy. It was based on strategy that has been circulating within our system. However, we wanted to all get on the same page. We wanted to have a curriculum, we wanted to have standards for teacher certification, and we also wanted to have a language board of non-employees, Cherokee experts, retired teachers, language advocates, even people from other successful language programs to help guide us and oversee the language programs that we have at the Cherokee Nation. And that's what we've been meeting on. This was a 5-year grant, and we are coming to the completion of this grant soon. And that is the summary of my responsibilities in a nutshell. So at this point, I will sign off.
What a covered. There's so many things moving right now and finally coming into place. You know, lots of for a couple of decades, lots of seeds have been planted and starting to see some of the fruit of that labor for sure. And so our next presenter, Udawadisk, Howard Paden's going to join us, and he's going to cover quite a bit. He has a lot of land to cover here for us, but he's going to talk to us a little bit about what was some of our other Cherokee language programs that provide some support, direct support to our learners within our programs and outside as well. Udawadisk is our executive director of the Cherokee Language Department. And so he's also going to finish up with some next steps. We have lots of special programs that happen on top of all of this work. And so he's going to touch base on some of those and give you an idea of just where all of these efforts, how they intersect and where everyone's going from here. Udawadisk.
Wado wohat, wado wade ale, wado aduhinsku, Udawadis, dawado chalakiye, chalakamon his newest dagilostaniho. I am happy to be here today. We did have another manager of the language programs that was going to present. And it had a emergency, so I'm going to start with his presentation. He would know these by memory, without a doubt. I have a presentation that sometimes we do that covers a relatively. We try to cover all that our current programs are doing. So within that presentation, I have a lot of Roy's things. So I'm gonna do that. He would be able to do this from memory. He has this like Aduhing and Wade. He has a lot going on. So let me share my screen real quick and we will get started. So one of Roy Boney's primary services that his programs offer, of course, is translation services. This is a service that our tribe has that allows us to do some things in to be able to translate all of the different documents that we have in Cherokee. Some of that goes into our court system. Some of that goes to our various language departments. But this allows us to do things like articles and that sort of thing in our Cherokee Phoenix and Cherokee. You see all the folks that work within that. We do have some contractors as well that comes in, on big projects. Russell Filling comes to mind. Some of them guys that really come in when we have Microsoft or Apple or something like that we're going into a really deep dive. So I'm going to have to jump through some of these slides real quick. I'll skip 3 or 4 because that's not something that Roy's doing, and Ryan or Adu he already covered. So just a second. So here's another program that is in with translations is language technology. We have a couple of guys that work within this program. One is Zachary Barnes, and the other one is Jeff Edwards. Both of these guys help with a lot of things, from posters to that's in our language, to some of the things that happens on our phones in various things. I know this last week they also had worked on some videos that has kind of explained everything that we do. I believe we have around 16 different language programs, and right now within a couple of years, it seems like at least some of the efforts that like the language technology or translations or master apprentice, they double every so often. So a lot of these programs are really moving fast. So these guys do an excellent job. They also work with our immersion school when we have teachers that's having problems doing some things. So we call these guys if there's some sort of glitch or if we need something built in our language, and they come running. So they do a good job. So community Cherokee language classes, you see Dennis 6 Killer here. Of course, these has kind of calmed down some since the pandemic, but primarily we have these 10-week classes throughout the 14-county area. It allows a first language speaker to come in and do some classes. A lot of other Cherokee speakers show up because they like to hear the language and learn how to read and write, that sort of thing. So these are very successful, and our community loves them. We don't go into our traditional communities and have gatherings right now, but this is something that we love to do, and we'll start back as soon as we can. Online Cherokee language classes. This is built by or taught by Ed Fields. There's 3 levels of classes the public takes, and they are offered in the spring and fall. I think he has up to about 3,000 or 3,500 students per year. Online language class archives, you can go in and see these. A lot of people that are at large, or some people that just want to hear our language, you can go into the YouTube, and it's in there. These are some of the things that you can look up if you feel like that you would like to spend some more time with them. So RSU TV, we just finished up our second season. All in all, between our first and second season, I think there's 96 episodes. It's in Cherokee. These are really taken off. And so Wade Blevins is the instructor. We have a Melvina Shop Pouch. There's other ones that come and help, but this is something that we are proud of, and it helps feed the masses to a degree. I think it airs every Saturday morning. If memory serves you right. It may even air more than that from PBS. Cherokee Language Portal. This is where you could go right in online. You can see up top where to log in at. This allows you to come right in and check different classes and different resources. Also, some of the things that language technology has done, you could go and download them. So this is a resource for the public. Cherokee language website. These are the same sort of things. So we break them down. You can see fonts, learning material, posters. This is in Cherokee.org. And it's pretty easily going through. When you about us, there's several this click on Cherokee language and it takes you right here. So it's also found at language.cherokee.org. Speaker Bureau, Cherokee Speaking Bureau. This is something that we tried to have. We was having once a month on the second Thursday. It allows Cherokee speakers to come from all the way around, come and have lunch together. We have went to various communities and allowed that to happen just organically. And but if we don't have it posted as a different community, it generally happens right behind a restaurant of the Cherokees in the community room. And you know, this is something we enjoy, although we have put this on hold because of COVID. But there's a lot of things that's happened as far as recording and that sort of thing. As a result of this, it allows some of our speaking population just to come and enjoy being in the language. So it's a beautiful thing. The Cherokee Language Consortium, this is when all three federally recognized tribes come together and have a meeting. We try to do that every quarter. We've still been able to do that every 6 months right now. But we are, if Immersion school or something like that, if they're trying to find a word for photosynthesis or something like that, all three tribes come together and make that translation and make that agreement. And so just as very progressive. A lot of tribes doesn't have this. This is a pictures taken in North Carolina. Generally, our folks from Cherokee Nation goes to North Carolina one time a year, and they come to us one time a year. So this is a very nice program. And translating the Cherokee Phoenix article, I think either this Friday or next Friday, this year's Phoenix, all Cherokee Phoenix edition will come out. And so it's something we really enjoy. We all the language gurus or language crazies like some of the ones that's been reported today will go and get several of these newspapers to keep throughout the year so we can pull it out and have things to read and just enjoy. So this is a good thing. They also try to do articles in language throughout the year. So we're finishing up. We finished up what Roy's doing. We're going to do some special projects. I think you guys have all seen some of the things that we've done with our Cherokee speaking communities. You can see right here some of the a lot of that. The different communities that has Cherokee speakers in it. They have primarily narrowed down to a couple of hot spots, one up north and one in south. Around Telequa, we've had a lot of migration that happened where they came from Paden County, Delaware County, and moved to Telequa. So Telequa has kind of been a hot spot as well. So, but we have been studying this and working to try to find language programs within these other hotspots outside of Telqual. So that's going to be in the next step. Some of it Chief will announce probably, I believe, at the State of the Nation. So there's some of it I'm not going to air. You'll have to watch some of the things he announces, but we're really, really excited. We're being as progressive as we can. So these was the communities we acknowledged and was really looking at when we went out to do our all of our speakers meetings, when we was doing the medallions and it was signing the Cherokee speaker roll. So this is exactly what we're talking about. This picture was taken of Crosby Smith in Marble City. So these are some things we did. We had 13 of these meetings, and the last meeting was done at the end of September of 2019. Little did we know that this book and the information we gathered would be the same information just a few months later when COVID came through our communities. We was able to bring food and that sort of thing to our Cherokee speaking population. This is the same information we gathered right here was the information we used to call them in order to get them in to be vaccinated. So didn't know that this is going to be as important as it was. We knew it was going to be important to have all the speakers come and sign the speaker rolls, but we didn't realize that it may be the very things that helped save some of their lives. So the last meeting, the next slide has a little video, and I'll play that for just a sec, and then we'll go on, move on. So in this meeting, there was about 600 Cherokee speakers. You can see it. So that particular meeting, it's the first time since statehood that we was aware that many speakers gathered in one place stately, and around 500 speakers show up and stood in a ring and vote against statehood around the turn of the century. So it was good to have them all there. Little did we know the couple that November, I think, the COVID broke out across the globe from us, but it came our direction to use that same information to get a hold of it. This is just a little bit of our new cartoon. This is another special project, and we'll go to the next step. I'll only play about maybe 45 seconds of it. Everybody that's involved in Cherokee language is really been involved in this. Is all the different programming in the language. So that was just a small snippet of some of the things that we're doing. Of course, Wade and Audrey, Troy was here. Everybody can talk a couple of hours because there's so much stuff that's happening. We're proud of everybody. What are some of the next steps? Well, like I said earlier, we're going to, Chief is going to announce some of that instead of the nation. So, disposal, but some of the things that we can kind of spoil is some really, it may not look as flashy, but to us, it's the big things. So, I'm going to ask Audrey or Wade if you guys, the next step, if you have a thought. We just have about 8 minutes left, but sure jump in. So there's some primary things that we're trying to address. One thing is our language is not fully documented, and we're wanting to make sure that we document the best of our abilities. So there is somebody has wrote our audio is stored. Let's see. Can you step in and start talking about the dictionary?
Sure.
Until we get this fixed.
Is my audio okay? Is it distorted? Can people hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, all right. So the first thing I'll mention is our curriculum, which I had mentioned before we talked about earlier, but it is a fundamental piece of what our overall plans are in terms of going forward. We found that, as you all know, under this current administration, language is a priority. And we've been given really the resources and the ability to start working on things that probably we've needed to do for a while. One of those things is this culturally based curriculum that allows us to create this calendar that is punctuated with these Cherokee activities, these things that we can define and identify as being Cherokee that help make us Cherokee. And within this curriculum, we will put in this information. So whatever things that we would do in terms, let's say, gathering foods, wild onions, we can put that into the schedule, into the calendar, build the content around that, and then adjust it for whatever purpose we need. So if we're doing something in the first grade classroom, we can build that for that specific scenario. If we need to build in these academic standards, then we can do that. So we can address, math, science, social studies, those 3 areas in that activity. This would also apply to, say, CLMAP. So for those students going out and doing these activities as well. So we can create this sort of curriculum stream that is adaptable to different levels, to different groups, and slightly different purposes, but they're all part of this overall sort of body of knowledge that we can say this is what makes us Cherokee. And so we can use that then as a basis for most of what we do in the immersion school and in other programming. So that is currently underway. We've started parts of it. We had a retreat with the teachers this July. We will be really putting together a team before too long that will be creating this curriculum, talking with speakers, working with curriculum experts and building this out. We foresee this will probably be a 2 to 3 year project ultimately. And when we're done, we'll have that base that we can use in immersion, CLMAP, 14 Gen, even community classes, and we'll probably make it available to the public as well.
I don't know that we fixed all the things we needed to fix. I do know we're running out of time, but in the process of that, I heard you talk about curriculum, and did you talk about the dictionary project as well?
I haven't talked about the dictionary project yet.
That's something that, do I sound all right, Aldean?
Yeah, you're very clear.
Okay. So one of the things we want to do is fully document our language to the best of our abilities. We're bringing in linguists and that sort of thing throughout that has been working, helping us. Some of the linguists has helped within the Cherokee Nation for language for a couple of decades. So we're bringing them in, building a real big language corpus, and finding a place to document. So primarily in the past, when we did dictionaries, there was English equivalent, so there was a word list. So with this, there's a comprehensional dictionary component where we write, explain this in a Cherokee thought, not equivalent, not an English equivalent. So also there's a sample lexicon where we'll say a sentence, and so that will be brought into a Webster style type dictionary that preserves the different words, at-risk words. We have groups right now looking at at-risk words. We will document that, record that, and that will finally go on to an iPhone or a phone situation where 50 years from now, a immersion school teacher that is teaching, and they could, if they forgot a word, they could pull out a phone or maybe a different device by then, who knows, and push a button and hear a first language speaker from this era of time say that word. So we know that's vital. So another thing is we're looking to do 10 certified teachers coming through the to be into a build their language skills up, because we are looking at other language programs. So that's something that's bringing in, and I think I have, we're not going to be able to explain everything that we have been doing, but I'll leave the last 30 minutes for Ryan, or 30 seconds for Ryan or Wade or Aduhin to add anything that I've missed.
This is Wade again. I just want to thank Kristen. She's the supervisor for Clement, and she has been instrumental in helping document the speakers and their speaker role. And she's not just our facilitator, but she does a lot for our program. And she could have been on this panel too, but somebody had to run the logistics, I guess.
We always have to have her to make us look good, don't we? So she pulled us all together. So
It's the easiest part of my job, gentlemen. I just want to take a brief second to thank everyone for being here this afternoon. I know that an hour seems like a long time, 45 minutes seems like a long time just to give some overviews, but there's so much happening right now in language work. And I said we're starting to see some of the fruits of the labor of those that have laid this foundation for us for the last few decades now. And we're hoping that we're going to continue to carry on in their memory and their example, and continue to strengthen that foundation and grow on it for those that come after us as well. So we thank everyone for being here. I dropped our website into the chat, so I apologize that we couldn't get to any questions and answers this afternoon, but goodness, that's a lot to digest. So if you think of any programs that you'd like to know any more about, feel free to reach out to anyone that was here today, and we'd love to be able to get some more information to you, or help you connect with anyone who's looking to start their language journey. So Widow Nagadawu, Widow Aniskai.